Beginning in the 1970s as a mail-order catalog, the Surfcaster has long been known as the source for hard-to-find surf fishing gear, and I've been personally shopping with them since the 1980s. They offer honest advice and the best recommendations regardless of your experience level, and will tailor their suggestions to what you actually need.
As you would expect from a business that's been serving the surfcasting community for 50 years, their prices are competitive and delivery is always quick and secure. They want you to have the best possible experience in the surf and have the knowledge and inventory to put the right gear in your hands to make that happen. So check out the Surfcaster at www.thesurfcaster.com, and if you're in the area, stop into their brand new brick and mortar store in Shelton, Connecticut.
Welcome to another episode of the Surfcast Podcast, and today we got a special guest. We have an interview with Steve Gallant. A lot of you are familiar with stuff he's written over the years, done some awesome video work as well. So welcome to the podcast this week, Steve.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. We've been excited about getting you on for a while now. Was right on the list when we started the podcast, in fact. So I'm excited to talk to you because we've never had an actual conversation, even though we've worked together quite a bit with Surfcasters Journal and your films and all of that. So we're really happy to have you on here today.
Yeah, this is really the first time we've had like an extended conversation aside from shooting texts and emails back and forth. So
that's right.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I'm a fan of the show, so I'm very honored that you guys want to have me on.
Cool, that's cool. So before we get started with today's topic, which would be the transition season, how's your season been? What's been going on?
Well, the season, I guess the best way to describe my season so far has been feast or famine. It has been either very good or very, very quiet. So, you know, the kind of the in-between nights of, you know, picking off one or two fish, it's really been like a really good night or absolutely nothing at all.
Interesting.
So I know some guys have been having similar problems, but I mean, as far as the timing of the season goes, everything has been more or less on the same schedule that it normally has.
Okay.
But just I would say the overall volume of fish that we have seen has been, you know, noticeably less than past years. I don't know about you guys.
Oh yeah,
it's interesting you say it started there. The timing's pretty similar because Jerry and I have talked about it a bunch of times that just off, whether piece would feel early and then something would feel late, and you might be the first person I've talked to, for better or worse, that said it's kind of on track with where it should be going.
Well, I mean, the timing in terms of like, okay, so my season usually starts in earnest the second week of May. And we had fish show up the first and second week of May. I've had some years where I've literally not caught my first bass until almost the 20th of May. So in terms of timing wise, like the fish showed up when they were supposed to. I will say that the thing that was different about this season and the last couple seasons is that the size class of fish that has showed up early in the season has been much bigger. Like we haven't really had the schoolie season as we normally would have had in years past, where you can kind of take the small schoolie rod out for the first few weeks and, you know, kind of play around with like small fish. I mean, we were into, you know, 20-pound class fish within the first week of them showing up, which is very different from how it used to be even a few years ago.
What's your thoughts on that?
It seems like the bigger fish. So part of me thinks that it's related to the uptick in herring. We've had increased herring activity in the runs that are near me. They've had increased, you know, return numbers, especially in like the Ipswich and the Essex rivers. The Merrimack and Parker have a pretty good herring return now. So, I mean, not what it used to be, but it's been improving year after year. So I think that the herring showing up a little earlier in the spring in a little bit better numbers are driving some of those larger fish to maybe show up a little earlier. That's my theory, at least.
Interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. Now, let me ask you a question. You said feast or famine, and the first thing I think of when somebody says that is, how do you react to that, Steve? Do you go, it's feast or famine, I'm going to go harder, and I'm going to fish all these nights? Or is it feast or famine, you're like, I'm only going to fish the absolute primo nights? How do you handle that?
I would say I fish harder around those times in the spring so in the spring, at least around here where I fish in the estuaries up in the rivers, when the fish show up, they tend to be there for a few weeks. Once they enter a river system, it's usually like unusual that they'll just leave the next day. So you'll get a good couple weeks usually when they show up. So when they show up, yeah, I tend to go pretty hard for a few weeks. It's also tide dependent. There are certain tides that are better for certain areas. So there's a certain few nights of the week or few nights of the tide cycle that the tides don't line up for where we fish. So it gives you kind of a breather, kind of a forced breather. But then when things line up, especially around the moons, I would like to think I'm fishing smarter, not harder now, like not just putting, and it's tide windows for us. It's not a full out, 3 to 4 hour bite. It's literally like an hour and a half window of that tide that you've got to hit. And so you don't have to kill yourself, but I would say that, yeah, I definitely hit it hard for a few weeks. And then, I have a feeling when it's time to go hard and when it's time to take a break. Sure.
So again, we're starting this off with a lot of intro because it's super interesting, but, those windows, please don't tell us anything about what they are, but if someone was trying to find one of those windows at their spot that has, they could be hundreds of miles from you, but in their spots, what tips do you get them for finding those windows? Because this is going to be something that Toby and I are actually going to talk about on the upcoming episode of the podcast.
So that's where it does take the grind. Like in order to find that window, you do have to put in sometimes 4 to 5. You almost have to fish an entire tide to figure out when. So the early season, yes, it is. I mean, I have a good idea from years of experience of fishing these same areas over and over and over again, but it's going to vary. So I would say my advice would be to hit it hard, almost like think of it as like a recon or scouting tides, where you're like, look, I know I'm going to go out and I'm going to put in an entire tide. I know that I'm only looking for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of that tide. So, yeah, there's no good way except to go out and burn those nights. But then once you do find out those windows, then it allows you to be like, all right, I'm going to show up tomorrow night at the time. And, so yeah. That's at least what has worked for me personally.
Yeah.
Do you ever, almost rework those? I've talked about before, I have certain spots, it's like, this is, this window is exactly it, and there's no variation, and I'll be on that for years. And then either a urge or I'll hear something pop up, and I'll try, a total opposite and go back. I'm like, crap, what am I missing for all this stuff?
Yes,
do you do that from time to
absolutely. I have. I don't find it as much with the rivers and the estuaries because, let's put it this way, some of the areas that we fish at low tide, there's not enough water in there to hold fish. So it's not a matter of let's go check it at low tide, because at low tide there's not enough water in there, period. So, but yes, I have had other times where it's I've gone and fished the opposite tide and been I've been missing something possibly for the last 3 or 4 nights,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
While we're talking about spring, but really any point up to this point, because we're recording this in the summer and it's going to come out in the summer, what's your standout lures this season? Has there been anything that's been extra standout, or has it been pretty much, okay, these are the things I fall on?
I haven't been trying so far. I mean, at this point in the season, the early part of my season has been mostly soft plastics. So it's been the same old, honestly. Gravity tackle, soft plastics are pretty much a staple in my bag when I'm fishing the estuaries in the spring. Paddle tails have been a bigger part, like as opposed to the straight 13 inch eel imitation. I've been mixing in paddle tails more, so I do find that there are nights that the paddle tail seems to get a little more attention than the eel imitation, or vice versa. So, no, it's so far this spring it's been much of the same for me.
So even when you're saying, your thought process might be that the improved herring numbers are sort of what's fueling this larger fish bite push you got early, you're still throwing essentially what most people would consider an eel type representation, despite
or the they have a larger, like an 8.5 inch paddle tail they make now. So it's either that or, but yeah, I mean, even around the herring, I find that it's just a matter of getting their attention a lot of times, as opposed to strictly matching that hatch.
Yeah, so do we. Are there different, this popped in my head, I've actually never really thought to ask someone who does this a lot, because I don't fish a lot of paddle tails, so it's not something that I do so much. But you mentioned some nights the paddle tail, some nights the eel. Are there certain conditions where you're like, no, this is more paddle tail leaning or more eel leaning, or is it sort of like, no, this is what the fish want tonight versus
it's
last
literally night? A trial and error a lot of times. I personally feel like I have more confidence in the straight eel imitation. It's been more working the paddle tail in, I would say, like busting through that confidence thing of just being like, but I'm so confident in the eel, just trying to get out, and also just being like, all right, I've already caught a few fish on the eel. Let's see if something different, they're responding to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Before I ask the next question, because I don't want to move us off, because actually I think this is interesting. Besides those soft plastics, are there any plugs for your spring, summer fishing that are kind of weird, but you're like, I can't leave without this, I'm going to pack it anyways? Or are you not like that?
No, I keep a couple weird things in the bag. I don't know if you guys know the Mikadine sand eel.
I don't.
Oh, yeah, is that the? I think I know what you're talking about with that one.
It's basically like almost. It's like a stub. It's not even like a stubby needle. It looks like someone cut the end of a broom handle off and like rounded off either end, and through wired it and gave it a sand eel coloration. There's a guy here in Gloucester that used to make them. And they were sold kind of locally at the tackle shops around here, and for whatever reason, and it stays right on the top. I mean, you kind of work it like a needlefish, and it doesn't walk the dog. It just kind of scoots forward and just makes like a little bit of a V wake. And I always keep one of those in my bags this time of year.
Interesting.
Redfin, I like a redfin, especially around the herring. Although I haven't been throwing it as much, just because I'm so confident lately in the soft plastics. But a redfin, swimming lures.
Isn't that what you
although I don't think that's not like really a strange option to have in your bag.
Not at all, but isn't that what you got your 50 on? Was the redfin?
Yes, I did. Yeah. Yep, that was on a redfin.
Yeah.
Loaded or unloaded? I forget. I know I read.
It was loaded, yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. That's cool.
I had to circle back real quick on the soft plastics. So how are you rigging them? Are you like, what's your general?
So I keep a bunch of different weights in my bag on any given night. I have some rigged weightless. I have some rigged with like a quarter ounce, anywhere from like a quarter ounce jig head to about a 3/4 to an ounce. In the summer, when I get out and start fishing like off the rocks, I'll usually throw some heavier weights in there because you're actually fishing some deep water. But for the beaches or for the estuaries, I'm just fishing them on an exposed jig head. Anywhere from half ounce seems to be like the sweet spot. I feel like I catch the most fish on a half ounce. You can keep it up in the water column, allows you to like work it pretty slow, but you can also just let it go down, and you can gets down in current pretty well, but half ounce seems to be the sweet spot for me.
Yeah, it seems it's like super versatile.
Yeah, we like
you said, you can. It's easier to work that deeper than it is to like go heavier and try to work a heavier upper.
And then you end up working it faster, like too fast, especially at night. Like you really want to slow it down. And I like the longer shank hooks too. I think it's Lunker City that makes them. They got a nice long shank, so it goes a little further down the eel, so you're not dealing with a hook that's like that far down the eel. It's pretty simple. I don't really rig them weedless. Most of the places I fish, there's not really much for obstructions, so just exposed hook.
So on the wait list, like what hook would it be then if you're going?
So that would, I guess, kind of be like a weedless, a weedless
swim bait hook.
I guess it would be like what, Texas style or something, like where you run it through the jig head and then the hook back into the body of it.
Yeah.
And then that way, if they bite it and bite down, that hook is exposed.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Before we transition into the topic, I'm curious, since we're talking about transition season, which we haven't got to yet, but we're talking a lot about spring right now. It's popped in my head. I'm curious, and maybe you said this elsewhere, but I'm not sure. What's your favorite time of year in the surf? Since we've been talking a lot about time, and we're going to. What's your favorite time of the year in the surf? We haven't asked anybody that, Toby, I don't think.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I don't know if we've done that one.
So for me, my favorite time of year is probably what I would consider the spring. I keep saying the spring, but the spring for me is really May and June. In my mind, once we get to the end of June and July, we're into summer. So I would say May and June are probably the time of year that I lose the most sleep and that I probably spend the most time out on the water.
Yeah, that's cool. That's kind of my favorite too, although I don't know, it keeps changing.
I mean, that being said, I've had some really good midsummers. I've had some amazing falls, but for the most part, the falls are really, really hit or miss around here.
Yeah.
Mostly missed the last few years.
Yeah.
Everywhere it seems, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Aside from like tiny pockets.
Yeah, maybe like Jersey. You know.
Exactly. Yeah. Besides New Jersey, feels like all I hear a lot more complaints than I hear people psyched about the fall these days. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, let's actually transition. See what I did there, you guys? See the pun? Let's actually move to our topic for this episode, even though that was already great. We kept going, but we're going to talk about the transition season. What a lot of people will call the dog days of summer or the doldrums, which I don't like, and Toby doesn't like that phrase either. So, and maybe we'll ask you that in a second, but we like to try and think about it instead as a weird transition time. Bait can be weird. You're seeing like high summer patterns, but you're starting to see the beginning of fall patterns, etc. It can actually be a very productive and interesting time of year in the surf. So with that in mind, before we go any further, I just want to know, when I say transition season, what's the very first thing that you think about?
I bet if you added it up, more striped bass were caught from the surf last year on plastic swimmers than any other plug. Probably even more than bucktails. The reason is simple. For generations, the plastic swimmer has proven to be a versatile, effective, and affordable fish catching machine.
And that's where the new Hogy OG Swimmer comes in. Unlike most of the other modern swimmers that all look and act alike, the OG Swimmer brings together a traditional design with modern enhancements to offer anglers with a unique and highly effective swimming plug unlike anything else currently on the market. With a unique wobbling action, it moves like an injured baitfish, and it's a large profile, chunky and tubular, and measuring in at 7 inches. Plus, with a downturn line tie, the OG Swimmer stays shallow, making it ideal for surf anglers.
All of this is tied together in an extra hard body that's through-wired and decked out with VMC hooks and a hand-tied bucktail teaser. And just like the Hogy needlefish, you won't find a rear hook on this lure, which is better for the fish, better for your hands, and easier on your wallet. This is all part of the Hook One platform, as well as Hogy's new core philosophy, quality for today, conservation for tomorrow. To find out more about this mission and to pick up one of these premium OG swimmers, be sure to check out www.hoagielures.com.
So the transition season to me is it requires like getting out of that comfort zone that you were just in for the last few weeks or months. For me, there used to be, like 3 real transition times of the year. The first transition time kind of happened in the spring when you would kind of transition from what I would consider schooly season into, you're out hunting big fish. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, I feel like that transition doesn't occur as much now. The other transition just really occurred a few weeks ago. So that's really when we transitioned from what I would consider the spring period, which we were just in, to now the midsummer period. For me, it means a change of venues, if you will. It means kind of getting back to the drawing board. I have an idea of where I want to go check in the midsummer this time of year, but there's no way of knowing until you get out there and start spending some time out there fishing some tides, whether you're on the right track or not. And then the second or third transition, depending on how you want to look at it, is in about another month or so. We'll transition from kind of our midsummer pattern into what many people consider the fall pattern. And that seems to be happening earlier and earlier every year now. Kind of like the end of August is really the start of the fall run for a lot of people.
Yeah, you feel that.
Do you, when you're going through one of those transitions, whether it's like the in-season one, let's call it, so like from the spring to that kind of summer, that summer to that fall, do you, when you make those next steps, do you kind of like look very much at what has already happened and that affects, or do you kind of go, all right, we're through that one, now I get into my next set? You know what I'm saying? Like, does the next stage get influenced terribly much by what you saw for bait, what your success or lack of success in certain areas was?
Yeah, so like I guess in terms of like the transition that we're in right now, or that just happened kind of a few weeks ago, like we're going from the estuary bite to what I consider more of like an oceanfront based fishing, beaches, the rocks and stuff like that. So we see, you see, maybe not actually seeing the movements of bait, but for one, as sad as it is, like we have a pretty big commercial fleet of boats up here, commercial stripers, and it's kind of hard to miss where they are some days, like if you know where to look. So you can kind of get a good idea of seeing where the fish are by where the commercial fish or where the commercial fleet is parked out. So I had a pretty good idea this year where they would be. I had some people send me some info being like, if you're looking for fish, all the commercial guys are here. So that obviously is not all the time, but like, you take little bits of intel wherever I guess you can get them. So, but it's, for me, it's just about getting out and trying those spots that traditionally in the past, I don't keep a log or anything. I know, Jerry, you keep like a really good log. Toby, I'm sure you probably keep a pretty detailed log. But, I have a pretty good idea of like where I should be fishing at a certain time of year. So it's a matter of just getting out and being like, all right, it's beach time. It's July. Let's get out and start hitting the spots, and through trial and error, that's usually what works for me.
Do you have? I have another question, but I'm going to wait on it because I think this is important. Do you have transition season? I'm not going to use the word doldrums. By the way, that's why I keep using transition. Everybody who's listening, I refuse to use the word doldrums. So if you want to replace transition with doldrums,
we're not saying the D word here.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We're not, no D word. If you want to do that in your head when you're listening, that's fine. But for the transition spots, do you have ones that are exclusively for this time of year? Or do you just kind of change the way you focus, or maybe the tide stage or something like that?
So I think what also I'm looking for this time of year is water temperature, like that's in their comfort zone. part of the reason why, we are done in the estuary around the time that we're done is that the water gets really warm back there. Once it gets upper 60s, lower 70s, those fish are gone. So I'm generally looking for that like mid 60s, that cooler water. And you're going to find that, I find a lot of times on incoming tides. Obviously, if you're near a river mouth, or, in that sort of area, the water heats up on an incoming, or when the tide is up and it's in the estuary, it's warming up in the sun. You get that warmer water going out on an outgoing tide. I like to think that there's colder, fresher water coming in on the incoming. So I like to fish the incoming a lot when I'm looking for that cooler water. I'm looking for deeper spots. If I'm out, on the rocks, I'm looking for spots that, I can access some deep water close to shore, because I know that there's going to be some cooler water down there.
So that incoming water, so you're fishing, the flood.
Yep.
Are you then saying, all right, I really want to fish the incoming water because I want the cooler temperatures? That means I need to fish this kind of spot. Does it influence that, or do you just literally fish the same spot? Okay.
But not necessarily. I mean, a beachfront, like I'm not going to not fish like an area of a beach or maybe a rock area just because it's an incoming and outgo. I guess I'm trying to think about how to best answer that. I kind of screwed this one up, Jerry.
No.
Sorry.
So the question is, I think you're onto it. So the question is, if you want an incoming tide because you want the water to be cooler, do you go out looking for a spot that intersects with an incoming tide?
Okay, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I guess I'm thinking in terms of like, if you look at where Cape Ann, where I am, it's a giant peninsula. So the cooler water that I'm looking for, I'm probably going to venture further out onto that peninsula, further out into what is basically the Atlantic, as opposed to something that's, closer to a bay or, like I said, like a river mouth or something like that. So yeah, we'll play a little bit into it. But like a beachfront, for example, like I think it's just a matter of being on an incoming tide sometimes as opposed to an outgoing tide.
Okay, so that's
in my mind at least.
Yeah. So that was you just answered exactly my question. The pattern is the tide coming in more is what you're
exactly.
what you're looking for a lot of time. I got you.
That's like factor number one in the equation.
Yeah. So a question though, because I feel like there's three camps for the transition season, not the D word. There's those who see it as sort of a casual, schooly time of year because they're around and the big fish aren't feeding. And for those who are just listening and not watching, I was just air quoting, so you can probably take away my feelings from that. Other people are like, no, it's like, this is like prime time, local, big fish. Bill Wetzel, he's one of those. And then there's a lot of other people who are like, I'm just not going to fish. It's worthless. It's not point. What camp do you fall into? Or maybe you're something in between, but.
I think I'm somewhere in between. I used to be, and it's partly just a result of like how the fishery where I am has kind of changed over the years. July and August, especially July, used to be, it was big fish trophy, I guess, season, whatever you want to call it. When I caught my 50 pounder, that was in 2017, that was the full moon of July, which was I think it was July 17th was the date. So that was fairly late in July, like well into what I would consider, the heart of the summer season, and what some other people would call the D word of the seasons. But I don't at all. I think it's just a matter of adjusting your tactics. Obviously, if you're fishing in the middle of summer, you're fishing in the middle of the day, you're probably not. It's strictly a night game this time of year, as I'm sure you guys are fishing, and most of the listeners of this are probably fishing at night. But it's strictly a night game this time of year.
So that actually gets to the next question that I want to ask. It's a perfect transition. Ha ha. During the transition time, what's one or a couple essential tips that you would throw it to anglers to keep them motivated or address something that they should know? And you just said fish at night, so maybe that's one, but is there anything else?
It only takes, like, I guess, like, it probably sounds corny, but it only takes, like, when you're in a couple week rut, which I'm currently in a couple week rut, it only takes one tide to turn things around, like, in a big way, and to figure out where that pattern is. So I try to keep that in mind, but it can be hard. The other thing I would, the advice I would probably give is to prepare to move around. Try a bunch of different spots. Have, like, if you're going out for a night, don't just have, if the area that you're fishing allows you to, try to have like a list, or make like a list of places that you're going to fish on a tide, and try to stick to that list. It's about covering ground until you figure out what that pattern is, or, you know, what point or what location that they're coming into. So it can be really hard. It's obviously a lot of trial and error, but that would be my advice, is just, you know, make a plan that hits a bunch of different places, maybe different types of places in a tide, and, you know, try to treat it as a sort of a scouting reconnaissance type thing.
Yeah, that's good.
Do you adjust your expectations in this window, like putting quality over quantity, or adjust even your goal? Like, you know, you might be I'm on a hardcore quality window and it's not working, and do you just pivot and say, I just need some quantity to kind of offset it? Do you kind of does it evolve, you know, based on like how things are going? Do you have any sort of system or trend?
I feel like my goals have mellowed a lot over the last few years. Like, if I can get like one or two nice fish like in a tide, I'm happy. Like, it doesn't need to be a gangbusters, like, oh my god, it was every cast for an hour. Like, I've never had a lot of those tides, so I see people saying that it was nonstop, it was literally every cast. I'm like, I don't know who's having these tides, but so I guess some people are. I mean, I've had good nights where, you know, you get a handful of nice fish, but anyway, I've definitely tempered my expectations over the last few years. But
why?
There are certain times of year, like the spring, that I'm hoping that I'm going to get a couple quality fish. It might only be one or two, but they're going to be the right ones, you know?
So why have you tempered your expectations? Is it just maturity? Is it you kind of want to do a certain thing and you get the fish and that's it? Like, because I've heard, you're certainly not the first person to say this once they get along, I think. So, like, what is it? What do you think has changed?
I think it's a combination of things. I think it's a realization of kind of where the fishery is at this point. I guess I'm not, like, I don't have as much to prove, I guess, as I used to. Like, I've done a bunch of cool things in the realm of surf casting. I was a guide for a few years, and that honestly sucked all of the fun out of surf casting. And
heard that before.
It made me not want to go out and do it a lot of nights. So it was literally like when I stopped guiding, it was like, I just want to go fish for fun. I don't want to bring a camera. I don't want to bring anything. You know, it was kind of finding just that love of surf casting again and just doing it for the fun of it. And so yeah, I feel like I've mellowed my expectations a lot over the last few years.
But why did you hate guiding? Or I don't know if that's fair, but why did you? I have to know. I'm off topic, I know, but I have to know.
No, that's fine. It just has a way, like, I don't know, you've probably heard the saying, like, if you wanna, I'm trying to think of the way to say it. If you wanna not like something, start doing it for money. You know, so it's just totally different when it's a job. And there's only so many good fishing spots around here, so it was for me at least, it was a kind of a balancing act between, like, okay, do I want to take a person to, like, what I consider a really good spot and that I fished with other people, you know, my friends, or do I want to take them to a place that, you know, we probably don't have as good a spot, but everyone knows where this spot is. And so it was a lot of trying to figure out what the right places were to take people to, and managing people's expectations. That was hard. People think that they book a guide and, we're going to catch a bunch of big fish. And it was, especially with Surfcast, it's one thing with a boat to have, I guess, high expectations when you book a charter, but boy, there are no guarantees when you're heading out in the surf.
Yeah.
Even if it's been super hot and you're on a solid bite, it always had a way of drying up when you would take a client out.
Especially because you had a reputation of being a producer when you started that. That's the thing.
I tried to.
Yeah, you did. Like, 'cause you were producing fish, and so people knew that, and then they want to go out with you, and we'll just catch one.
And then I quickly realized it was, well, how would I say this politically correctly? I was taking a lot of people out there. There was a big skill set difference, and I would literally have to just stand back and let them fish because they would get frustrated that I was catching fish and they were not. So that led to some uncomfortable nights too. So anyway, it just
interesting.
It was a I guess a cool thing to say I did for a couple of years, but I have zero desire to ever do that again.
Yeah, that's funny. So getting back to the task at hand.
Yes.
Are there any? This one I'm very interested in because there is for me. So, are there any late summer baits that you look for regularly? Is there something that you're like, during the transition season, this might happen, and if I see it, I'm excited?
So I haven't seen it up here in a couple of years, but and this is mostly like an open beachfront thing. But if I found silver sides out there, a lot of times we were in for some good nights. And for maybe people that don't know, silver sides are very small. They're kind of like, I don't know smaller than a sand eel.
Yeah, they're like minnow. Yeah. You would look at them and say,
yeah, they're literally
minnow.
like minnows. They
are
tiny.
Like a saltwater shiner.
And so a good way to check, at least where I fish on the beaches, if there's silver sides, I'll literally walk down the beach, and if you like flick on your headlamp for just a second or two out onto the water, and that light hits those silver sides, they will erupt and come flying out of the water. So it's a really easy way to check like a sand beach. You can walk every 50, 25 yards, just click it on for a second to see if you're seeing any silver sides out there. And we used to have some really good nights in July and August around the silver sides. Throwing, they're a tiny bait, but we would be throwing red fins or needlefish, and fish were still eating them.
Now, did you care if it was like the little baby silver sides, or there's times I've caught them and I grab them in my hand and they're bigger than the palm. Like, were these little guys or a mix or anything?
They were pretty small. I would say maybe at the longest 3, maybe 4 inches. I guess that's pretty big for a silver side. But they weren't like teeny tiny. They were a couple inches long at least.
Yeah.
Because you kind of feel like that.
But like I said, I haven't seen them in a couple summers up here. I don't know what contributes to them being, there one year and not the next. So
has anything like replaced them where you would see them in the surf?
Not that I've seen. On nights that I'm out, it's pretty rare that if I'm fishing like an open beach, that with the exception of silver sides, it's pretty rare that you'll flick on your light. Maybe occasionally you'll hear bunker flipping around, but they have to be in pretty decent numbers in order to even have any idea that they're there at night. I don't know if there's something that's come in necessarily to take their place. We do have some sand eels that come in, especially in some of the sandier bays that we have. But those have been very spotty and hit or miss the last few years too.
Yeah, Toby, you like silver sides. You've said that in the past.
Yeah, the big ones. When the little guys are in it, it's like the masses of them I haven't done as well. But I've had some really good bites on, like I said, giant. The things, they don't even look like silver sides. They're more like, I don't know, anchovies that you would.
Yeah.
Like 5-6 inch silver sides, like mega. When those are around, I get excited.
Those are big.
Yeah. You have to. Yeah, when you see those, you have to take a moment and go, is that a mullet is it mullet jumping?
Yeah.
Or
Right,
is it, they're
like,
that,
what
they're
am I
like that
thinking?
big. Yeah. They're
Yeah, but
literally
you can
that big.
catch them, like, you can stun them with your headlamp, and they'll just go, like, limp. And I've literally just grabbed them out of the water. They just go,
Yeah.
and you know for sure, this is just a mega-ass silverside. There's a good potential here now.
Yeah.
So during the transition time, do you change your plug bag at all? I mean, Toby and I have talked a little bit about this, how ours doesn't change a ton. Does yours change at all for this specific period of time?
I wouldn't say fundamentally in a huge way. Like if I'm fishing a beach or the rocks, I'll have some things in there that are specific to those areas. Like if I'm fishing a beach, I'll always have a couple needlefish, some heavier options. So if I'm fishing a place that I'm really trying to reach out to, like a sandbar, if I'm fishing the rocks, I'll have some stuff that's specific to that. Like there's some areas I fish off the rocks that have really strong current and a rip, so I'll throw in like, a bottle darter or a darter. And just some very, very heavy things, stuff to get down in the current. I would say in the midsummer, I'm also throwing some, I'm putting a few things in the bag in case the bluefish show up. So probably some tins. This is as far as like if I'm looking during the day, for bluefish. But
what heavy? You said, I'll do something heavy to get to the bottom. What's your heavy thing? What do you mean by that?
So bucktails usually midsummer, just because there's so many bluefish around. Anywhere up to like a 2-ounce bucktail, or some just heavier paddle tails and stuff like that. Something to get down, ounce and a half.
When you said, like you've mentioned deeper water, because a lot of our listeners have asked this at different occasions when we've solicited questions. Like for you, what range do you start considering it deep water? Is it
anything over like 15, pushing 20 feet is like what I would consider deep water. A lot of the beaches that I'm fishing, I would say at no point am I fishing probably much more than 10 feet of water. Where I'm fishing, probably less than that. The rocks that I'm fishing, there's a few spots that it gets really deep. I mean, we're talking like it's like a cliff that drops off, and there's almost 50 to 60 feet within casting range of shore. So that's pretty deep water. But then there's other places, in my opinion, anything over 15, 20 feet is what I consider like deep water around here.
How important is the wetsuit for you during your doldrum season?
I
used it. I said it. Oh,
sorry, I
said
had to call you out. Didn't mean to jump on you.
Oh man, I said it. All right, sorry.
The wetsuit used to be a lot more important. Like I said, the local fishery has changed a lot over the last few years, and I'll just say some of the sandbars that we used to venture out to either aren't there anymore, or they just don't produce like they used to. I still wear the wetsuit sometimes just because it's more comfortable to walk long distances. And there's a few spots that we still get kind of deep. It doesn't play as important a role for me anymore. And the sharks are, I'm sure like they are a lot of places, the sharks are really sketchy up here now. And like I said, we used to wade, chest deep, neck deep out onto some of the sandbars out there 5-6 years ago, and I don't think I would do that anymore.
Were you in the wetsuit when that great white was taking the shark or the fish from people's boats, the charter guys? Were you wetsuiting at that time?
Yep, I've been down on the beach when someone has reeled in a fish head. So yeah, it's there,
Because that was a few years ago.
Down there.
A few years ago, there was a great white in that general area that was taking fish. So I was just curious, and it was right inshore.
Yep, that was I know right where that was. That was not far from where we were fishing.
Yeah,
you can see that from where I was fishing.
But you also do some wet wading. I mean, this is now getting into early fall, but you do some cool wet wading stuff where you're just like in shorts, or you wear like tights or something.
I would say the majority of the spring. So I have a pair of they're like neoprene pants.
Okay.
I think they're 1 mil. They're not super thick, but I wear them in the spring a lot, either under a pair of like quick dry pants or a pair of shorts sometimes. For the most part, I mean, that works for me. I've just had really bad luck with waders over the years, and they seem to always inevitably leak. And for me, with the exception of like the first few weeks of the season, I have like neoprene socks that I wear with the neoprene pants. I'm pretty layered up on my upper half. I'm not too uncomfortable, So like I said, with the exception of like the first few weeks of the year that can be a little chilly, but right now it's perfectly comfortable to be out there wet wading.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I feel like people are going to find that last little tidbit interesting. Oh, the neoprene pants versus the waders. Because we all hate waders.
Called NRS. Look up if you're in the market for pants, or they make some really nice. The boots that I use for the rocks that I strap my corkers to, they're also made by NRS, and they are awesome. They're basically like, it almost looks like a military work boot, but it's mostly neoprene. It's great.
Yeah, they do lots of.
And it's got a little thing. It's got a little thing in the back that like holds your corkers perfectly. I think they're for like if you to put on swim fins or something like that. Yeah. But they work perfectly like with a pair of corkers.
Toby, this has been a great episode. We're running out of time for all of our questions, so I'm going to do something we haven't done before. I'm going to let you choose because we've got 2 major topics left, and I'll let you choose which one you want to tackle, which one you want to ask him. Because there's no way we can do both. We'll have to have him come back. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, which is fine. I mean, we've had a theme to a degree on a lot of our episodes this year, so I'm kind of leaning towards the Eels.
Okay, go for it. Yeah, we have talked about those a few bits, so go for it. I'll let you go for it.
So, let's see. So you've talked about in the past, written about it, that eels were pretty important, but you haven't mentioned that yet today. Is that something you're still using? Do eels play?
So can I make a confession? This is a safe space, right?
Yes.
Totally.
It's
just the 3 of us.
Yeah. Nobody's listening.
I have not fished an eel since. When did they change the regulations to the circle hooks?
19?
Yeah, 19 or 20-ish. I forget exactly. It's been about 5-6 years.
Since then. So when they changed that, I was like, I'm going to give the soft plastics a try, and I never looked back. And a big part of that, like, so, I mean, I know, and I kind of, everyone keeps asking me, they're like, oh, do you still fish eels? So now I kind of want to go get some eels and fish them, because I haven't fished them in so long. But I also just moved in with my girlfriend a couple months ago, so I don't know how having eels at the apartment is going to go just yet. So maybe next season. But a big thing for me when I fished eels was with fishing a J-hook, I loved setting the hook. That was the best part of fishing an eel. Mm-hmm. Like for me at least, was letting that rod tip go down, feeling that thump, and then just crossing that fish's eyes. That was for me like one of my favorite parts of fishing it. So when they changed the regulations, I was like, all right, I'm gonna try. Like I said, I'm gonna try the soft plastics, and I won't say that maybe it's just as good, but the convenience of not having to go get eels and having to store them and keep them alive, like I feel like the soft plastics are almost as effective in some cases. I don't want to say more effective, but I've been doing just fine with soft plastics.
I completely agree with you. I would say I think there's times where they could be more effective. I really do.
I've had nights where I have literally fished side by side with someone fishing an eel, and the soft plastics did better. So
there you go.
And there's the versatility factor. I mean, you get an eel, you could put a hook in it. You add a little weight. You could rig them if you want to go. Like there's a couple, but I've found there's just so many different ways you can fish the soft plastics that. Really, the only advantage you flip back on the eel is that it's real. It's real meat.
It's real, yeah. And it smells like the real thing. It moves exactly like the real thing because it is the real thing.
Yeah.
But like, if you think about like an eel, so I remember fishing an eel, a super lively one. In eels, most eels at least, first inclination is to just head straight to the bottom. There are going to be places that you're fishing or scenarios that you're fishing where you might not want that eel to head straight for the bottom. You might want to keep that right up on the surface. So in that situation, throwing a weightless, soft plastic eel imitation might be better. Or vice versa, like when you're fishing with an eel and they die, they have a tendency to float. So if you're trying to get an eel or you're fishing a scenario where you're trying to get that eel down there and you're fishing with a dead eel, unless you want to take it off and put it on a jig head or like a rigged eel situation, you're kind of at the mercy of where that eel wants to swim or where it's going to float.
Yeah, they come right up.
I agree, Toby. I think there's a lot more versatility with a soft plastic and different weights and whatnot.
And I mean, like you said, the ease, the consistency, like there's so much.
Yeah.
I
you can just grab your stuff and go. For me, like it's. I live in Gloucester. To go up to Plum Island, to Surfland, where I get my eels, it's a 45-minute drive each way. So you're talking about taking an hour and a half out of your day to go get eels. Possibly a couple times a week. So
yeah. There's a lot of benefits. I mean, I talked about it. And one of my goals this year was to fish eels again, and we'll get to that in one of our goal update episodes. But like the same things you're saying, I kind of miss it, but it's so much like that convenience factor. Seriously outweighs a lot of the other things.
Yeah, like I said, I'm willing to maybe catch a couple less fish just for the convenience that soft plastics offer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I got to ask one question then on it. Do you add scent to your soft plastics?
So the gravity tackle ones that I use, they come impregnated. I'm not sure. I think it's like some sort of fish or squid type oil.
Squid oil, yeah.
Yeah. So they're pretty pungent when you take them out of the bag. Although it does.
They sure are.
They're pretty oily. They get all over your hands. But I will say that I've had good success with eels or soft plastics that have been sitting in my surf bag for a week and a half, and they're all, they've caught a few fish and they're clearly not putting out scent anymore. So I think it helps, but I don't think it's detrimental.
Mm-hmm.
It might turn a few that were maybe on the cusp of hitting.
All right.
Well, Toby and I put ours in a dish trainer and we wash them with soap. That's how we feel about that. So we don't like
that. That's the first thing I do.
That's the
soap
first thing
and
I
water.
do.
Clean them up.
Yeah, that's why potentially some other people like Hoagie or etc. maybe also good because they're not soaked in it and etc.
Yeah.
So, but to each their own. That's what we say.
Hey, to each their own. I mean.
Yeah.
So, are eels more or less important during the doldrums in the past? So forget about now, because you have a lot of experience.
Yeah.
Were they more or less?
No,
important?
I mean, in midsummer, that was all you were doing was going to get eels. And if you were heading out in July and August, although that being said, when I caught my 50, that was on a. But what was different about that was we specifically had some big schools of pogies that were along the beach at that time. They were out there during the day. We knew that they were there at night, so that was a little bit different. But for the most part, midsummer is eel time. I used to have a tank in my garage, with an aerator that was running 24/7 and a constant rotation of eels, through that tank. So eels were very important for the midsummer, especially for the beaches.
Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily just as easy, and this is Toby's big thing, which I don't know how much you've preached it on here, Toby, to this point, but I think you feel this way. It's not just as simple as throwing out the eel and catching a big fish. There's more that goes into it. So what is your preferred tactic in terms of, pattern, presentation, etc. with the eel? What are you doing? Are you casting to reel it back? Are you letting it settle? Are you swinging it? Are you looking for really fast moving water pockets? What are you thinking?
When I was fishing eels a lot, it was moving water, kind of drifting them. It would depend, obviously, when the tide was really ripping, you were kind of just sending it out and kind of just, for me, it was just keeping contact with that eel, feeling those head shakes. There were other times where, depending on how the water was moving, sometimes off the rocks, you would have to have a little bit more of an active retrieve. Anytime there was any kind of wave action, it would make it a little trickier to keep contact with that eel. So I felt like it was more like working a soft plastic, like if it's, if there's any sort of wave action. But when I was fishing beaches a lot midsummer, it was, finding a spot, usually like a point or something on the beach with some good current movement, and just getting it out there in the zone where you felt like the fish were, and just kind of just barely keeping contact with that eel, and trying to keep them up in the water column towards the top, and just kind of drifting it very slowly.
Yeah. Okay.
I got one last question to connect that back to the soft plastics. Your experience for that, the time when you were fishing a lot of the live eels, and then you made the switch. Do you feel that it made you a better fisherman with the soft plastic? Like, did it lessen that learning curve because you were kind of able to like try to supplement them back in, or do you think it was still like, all right, I'm going to something fresh and new?
I think it helped because there were nights that I think fishing the eels for a while helped, because there were nights, especially if you're fishing dead eels, you're basically using a soft plastic. I mean, at least I was just slowly retrieving it, twitching it maybe every few turns of the handle, and figuring out what kind of speed and retrieve would keep it at the point in the water column where you wanted it. So I think that there's a lot of crossover between fishing eels and fishing soft plastics, especially when you get into some situations, like I said, where you're fishing a lot of current, because there are situations still where I'm more or less drifting a soft plastic. You're sending it out, and then you're kind of just letting it go with the current, maybe popping it, and then once it kind of reaches the end of that drift, then you're kind of retrieving it, pulling it up. And so I would say that there are places that I fish a soft plastic where it's almost identical to how I would fish an eel back in the day.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So let's wrap this up with what I think is an important question. When does this transition time end for you? What are some signs that you look for where you're like, all right, it's time to start a click? And I'm not even suggesting, I'm not even gonna let you answer. You might, but you could tell me to F off, that's fine. But it's obviously not like it's now, it's over. Today is the day, the fall has started. We're in, but what are some things where you're like, all right, I gotta really start thinking potentially differently?
Well, around here, I know when the fall is starting because we start to see birds and we start to see surface feeds around here in the day, in the afternoons. So when I start to see bird action, and what I'm fortunate where I work, basically I drive along the ocean a bunch of times throughout the day. So the type of work that I'm doing, I work on people's houses and construction, so a lot of our customers are right on the waterfront. So I tend to see a lot of things over the course of the day, driving here and there. So when I start to see turns and stuff, hovering over balls of bait, which you don't really see in the middle of the summer, it's time to start looking at some of the fall spots, or thinking in terms of that next transition.
Yeah, I got you. Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Steve, for coming on. This has been great. This conversation went a lot of different ways, which is really fun. Actually.
Went all over the place.
Yeah. It's actually really fun. We definitely didn't get to everything we wanted to, so that's just an excuse for us to bring you back at some point in the future for sure. So I'm glad that we finally got to talk. This has been great. Hopefully we'll talk a little bit more. Before I kick it over to you, Toby, I am just going to say that there may or may not be some video stuff that's coming in SJ that Steve did again. So look for that coming in the near future potentially, because that's always fun, and all those cool little films you've done have been really fun. Got some great feedback. I think, all of them are available on the Surfcasters Journal YouTube, right?
Yep, and they're all on the YouTube.
They're all on the YouTube live right now. You can go watch. You don't need a subscription or anything. So go back, maybe watch them again now that Steve was on. So thank you, Steve. Sure. I'll kick it over to you, Toby.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, just want to say thanks as always. I'll keep it short. It's good to finally talk to you. I know we've had a handful of emails over the years from back when I was at the Fisherman and through till today. So it's good to finally have a good lengthy conversation and hit about 100 different subjects with you. So thanks for that.
No, I really enjoyed it, guys. Like I said, I'm a fan of the show, so I'm honored that you guys asked me to be on.
Great. Thanks, Steve. This has been a weekly edition of the Surfcast Podcast. You can find out more about the podcast at surfcastpodcast.com, or definitely check us out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, at the Surfcast Podcast.